Former Duke Blue Devil Mark Mitchell is exactly the type of versatile forward that Dennis Gates needed. I want to tell you why, coming up right now on Locked On Mizzou.
You are Locked On Mizzou, your daily podcast on the Missouri Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, all you true sons and daughters, I'm John Miller, your Mizzou mafioso and the central scrutinizer of Missouri Tigers football and basketball. On today's program, I have a pretty significant update on Javon Porter and whether he's coming to Missouri or not, plus linebacker, some say the best prospect in the state of Missouri for football, Dante McClellan, has a big decision coming up very soon. And of course, I do want to talk about Mark Mitchell here right at the top of the show. First, I want to tell you that I do have a competitive side. Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. And I admit my competitive side is a big fan of Monopoly Go, the big mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. Join your friends and download Monopoly Go now, free on the App Store or Google Play. And I said right at the top of the show, I really believe Mark Mitchell is exactly what Missouri needed next season. Now, there's still some needs out there for Missouri. Perhaps you get more of a true center in the portal, for instance. But I'll just tell you, Mark Mitchell can guard some fives. I don't think he is a five in terms of, hey, he's a traditional back-to-the-basket type of center. He's certainly not Zach Edey, right? But what he is an incredibly versatile player. And at 6'9", you just don't see many guys who can move like him. Now, the former Blue Devil and McDonald's All-American, 6'9" kid, again, as I said, from Kansas City, Kansas, sort of similar to Tamar Bates in that from that KCK area, in that Missouri, and Tamar Bates got close to a marriage the first time around. Well, the second time around, love springs eternal, apparently. Mark Mitchell, like Tamar Bates before him, is now a Missouri Tiger. Hopefully he'll be as productive, even maybe more so than Bates was last season. Obviously, he was an excellent addition on what was a highly disappointing team. But one of the first things that stands out when you watch Mitchell play is he's an incredibly versatile defender. Again, as I said, offensively, he's not a traditional five by any means, but you saw moments, key moments, where he would guard some of these centers in the ACC, getting key stops in key moments for the Blue Devils. And speaking of versatility, it certainly moves over to the other side of the ball too, where Mitchell definitely has a little bit of handle on him too to go along with all that size. Can do, again, just a little bit of everything offensively, a good offensive rebounder, solid passer, just a solid feel for the game. And again, just his movements. Sort of like I've been emphasizing for all you everydayers with Jaden Quaintance, the high school prospect that Missouri's been after now for months. Just the way Mitchell moves like a guard at that size just really stands out. In the fast break, he can lead the break, he can fill the lane, Euro steps in transition, really nice footwork in general, by the way, other than just those Euro steps. And I would say that he's kind of Kobe Brown adjacent. Now, if he shoots 40+% from three, as Kobe did his senior year with Dennis Gates, holy cow, look out. Because right now, his shot is a little bit awkward, especially from the outside. It's a little bit of a left-handed push shot, almost. The mechanics are certainly awkward from long range, and considering how fluid he is with every other part of his game, that's a little bit surprising. But I will point this out in a fairly small sample size. During 2 years in ACC play only, he is a 40% three-point shooter. So maybe there's a little bit more there than meets the eye. He was a 76% foul shooter his freshman year. That went down quite a bit to 62%. So hopefully there's just some things in his game that can be tinkered with. And by his game, I mean his mechanics and his shot. That's something that Missouri has seemed to do pretty well the last couple of years with several players. Now, maybe Connor Vanover wasn't one of them. For whatever reason, he did not shoot the three well last year. But for the most part, obviously Demoy Hodge, Kobe Brown, Sean East in particular. My goodness, the improvement there from three last year for East was dramatic. So if Mitchell can do that, man, you've really got something there, because during conference play, again, last season, number 1 in free throw rate. So that just shows you Mitchell's athleticism translates. He's a problem around the basket in the fast break. And again, just a menace defensively. I'm really excited to see Mark Mitchell play. As one of my guys, old Jason Jennings over there in Raleigh, North Carolina from WRAL, told me, he likes his game a lot, but thinks he hasn't tapped in fully to all of his upside yet. Once he fully puts it all together, if he does with Missouri, man, I really think we've got something special here. And he's the type of player that would have made Missouri significantly better just last season. These types of forwards who can basically do it all on both ends of the court, they're worth their weight in gold. They really are. And I think, indeed, just that one difference on last year's squad would have made a huge difference. And obviously it looks like Missouri is upgrading its talent and athleticism and length all over the court, especially with Tony Perkins at point guard, 6'4", good athlete, dunker of the ball, that kind of stuff. I think defensively, he's going to really upgrade Missouri's defense at the point of attack. So again, Mark Mitchell, exactly what the doctor ordered for Dennis Gates. And I feel like I probably could have broken some news today if it weren't for my daughters and their need to be picked up from preschool. How dare they? But no, seriously, folks, Gabe DeArmond over at Power Mizzou, just really maybe 30 minutes or so after I heard basically the same information, Gabe out there saying that it looks like Javon Porter is now likely to go to Loyola Marymount. And again, I had a person who is pretty inside in that world too telling me the same thing. So I have the same information. Good old Gabe beat me to the punch. That's okay. We'll be just fine. But for real, Javon Porter going to Loyola, it sounds like Missouri probably would have been the destination if it hadn't been for the whole Dante Porter situation. Of course, Javon's older brother, Dante, banned for life from the NBA. So I think the feeling was from Javon, hey, it's going to be harder to get away from all this talk in Columbia, Missouri. Now, I'll just say, from the media's perspective, I'm guessing, of course, when Javon Porter showed up from day one, they're almost obligated to ask him a question about it, right? But it's not as though every day the local Missouri media is going to be badgering him about Dante Porter. Now, the locals, the townies, even worse, the people on Twitter. Now, that could be a problem. I could see why you would want to avoid all of that stuff. And, well, frankly, it's just kind of seemed like there was a strong pull toward Lorenzo Romar and Loyola Marymount. Anyway, of course, Romar, the longtime friend of Michael Porter Sr., he was the high school coach of those young men. Well, that's not true. Sorry, I got that wrong. No, he was the head coach at Washington, and that's why the Porters moved to the Seattle area, because they were eventually going to go to Washington. Well, he got fired. They ended up Missouri. Long story short, yada, yada, yada. So that's what's happening there with Javon Porter. Frankly, I'm okay with this. I really am. I understand, first of all, from a personal perspective, hard to blame Javon Porter for maybe wanting to get away from Columbia. I really can't blame him there whatsoever for a bunch of different reasons. And secondly, I'll be honest, I wasn't over the moon about Porter's game, at least on paper. I'll tell you that. And here's the thing. It does all deserve some context, because he did play a lot better down the stretch his sophomore year. He missed the first 12 games of the year with some kind of injury, I suppose, but he didn't log 30 minutes this year until January 11th, and ever since then played 30 to 40 minutes in every game, with the exception of a couple blowout victories for the Waves. So I'm just telling you the stats for Javon Porter. Some of them were a little bit discouraging, but you could also give some context there and say, wait a second. He's on a better team, not having to use so many of his offense's possessions. Actually, his production could go up quite a bit. For me, it was more the rebounding numbers, the lack of defensive rebounding that was a concern to me for a team that really didn't rebound at all last year. To be fair, though, Javon Porter, again, sort of like Mark Mitchell, a versatile forward who can move well, do a lot of different things on both ends of the court. So Missouri would have definitely taken him, and under different circumstances, it sure sounds like Javon Porter would have been a Tiger. But again, according to Gabe DeArmond and my source as well, that ain't going to happen. And coming up on the program, would you believe it? There's actually some bad recruiting news for the Missouri Tigers, as one of their longest prospects in the 25 class decided to take his talents to the West Coast and go to Oregon instead of Missouri. Let's talk about all the implications there. But first, guys, I need you all to listen up for this huge announcement. I have been tracking the leaderboards every day, keeping my eye on the scores and putting my heart into it, and I'm super pumped to announce I am finally on top. That's right, obviously, I'm talking about the hit mobile game, Monopoly Go. You've probably heard of it. It's been downloaded more than 150 million times. It's a great mobile twist on classic Monopoly. You can play anywhere, anytime. You explore hundreds of Monopoly boards from Las Vegas to Camelot to the moon. That's right, Alice. All while raking in a huge fortune. Charge rent on iconic properties just like classic Monopoly. You can charge your friends rent on your iconic properties or go after their Monopoly money by pulling bank heists and taking wrecking balls to their landmarks. But my favorite part is the leaderboards, where you can see who's a Monopoly tycoon and who's gone bankrupt. So get yourself on the charts. Download Monopoly Go now, free on the App Store and Google Play. And passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. We're talking superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With more than 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. The Locked On NFL Mock Draft is available now. Find the ultimate 6-episode series on Locked On NFL Draft to hear who the local Locked On experts are picking for every NFL franchise, with live reactions from local college experts and even the fantasy football angle. It's the Locked On NFL Mock Draft, available now on Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you get podcasts. Well, do you want the good news or the bad news first when it comes to Mizzou football recruiting? From my memory, Bugs Bunny always wanted the bad news first, so we'll just go with Bugs. And Isaiah Mozee, a longtime Missouri recruit, 6 foot, 190-pound wide receiver from Lee Summit North, also the son of the head coach up there at Lee Summit North the past few seasons. Well, Mozee has decided to go to Oregon instead of Missouri. Now, the good news here is that Missouri's doing pretty well at wide receiver. Certainly currently, Missouri's doing great at wide receiver with Luther Burden, Theo Weiss, Marquise Johnson, Mookie Cooper, among others, certainly. But even the future looks pretty bright. Javon Boggs, an Ohio State decommit, certainly a guy that could be a real strong possibility for Missouri in the future. But there's no way to sugarcoat this. This is definitely a disappointment. Isaiah Mozee is a guy that Missouri wanted for sure, and apparently, well, maybe Oregon wanted him a little more. Who knows? Definitely Oregon and Missouri, I think, have been known as among the most aggressive players in terms of NIL compensation in the portal. So did Missouri get outbid here? Did Mozee just want to get out of the state? Does he just love the uniforms? Who the heck knows? But, this is a miss for the Tigers. It really is, and a rare miss these days for Missouri. But fortunately, here's the good news. Isaiah Mozee, not actually considered the top player in the state, according to Rivals or 24/7. No, that's Dante McClellan, the Ohio linebacker, 4-star player. Well, he's deciding his commitment, at least his verbal status, on Monday. Missouri feeling pretty good about it, so hopefully we'll get some more good news on the program come Monday. Now, one interesting note for Missouri, a very little used, if not at all used, defensive lineman for Missouri entered the transfer portal. And I'm going to attempt to pronounce this young man's name here without bungling it, but I'm probably going to fail. So please be forgiving here. Sirigne Tunkara has entered the portal for Missouri, which isn't a huge bit of news because for next season, I don't think he was a guy who's particularly high on the depth chart anyway. But what's interesting here is Brian Early, who is Missouri's new defensive end / edge rusher coach, put out a tweet saying, "Good player on this young man hitting the portal, buried a little in a talented room, athletic, twitchy, and has some natural pass rush ability. Great kid, great work ethic, has 4 years. Hit me if you need more info." So this was Brian Early on his Twitter account, by the way, just putting that out there for the public. So thought that was an interesting move there to almost be saying, hey, we're going to help the guys who used to be on our squad get a decent landing spot. I like that move, quite honestly. Though Jeff Worley, who is a listener on YouTube, he doesn't necessarily like the move of hiring Brian Early. He says, "Hey, John, longtime fan, really enjoy your shows. Wondering, what do you think about our new D coach from Houston? May be wrong, but wasn't their D-line ranked 115? My only concern about this coming year and South Alabama, are these guys really ready for the SEC?" So, of course, he's talking about Brian Early there, the new D coach from Houston, but also, of course, Corey Batoon from South Alabama, Missouri's new defensive coordinator. Well, I'll just say I'm not particularly concerned at this point because the last time Missouri plucked a line coach from Houston, I'd say it worked out pretty darn well. Brandon Jones was excellent last year for Mizzou, in my opinion, on the offensive line. And as to the idea that wasn't their D-line ranked 115th, I think you mean wasn't their defense in general ranked 115th. Maybe they were in scoring or total offense, something like that. My preferred method of judging a defense, S&P plus. Well, last season Houston was indeed 102nd in defense. So that doesn't fill me with a tremendous amount of confidence, that particular statistic. But again, did anything Brandon Jones did at Houston on paper, statistically, did that fill you with tremendous confidence? Because I don't know if there was anything you could have seen on paper, just as a fan outside looking in, that could have allowed you to predict that. I think at a certain point, you have to trust Eli Drinkwitz and his ability to hire assistants, which so far I think he's done a pretty good job of for the most part. You can argue Steve Wilkes was a miss, fine and dandy, but other than that, where else has Drinkwitz really missed in terms of hiring coordinators, position coaches, all that good stuff? And as for Corey Batoon, maybe the defensive coordinator for Missouri, is he not ready? Well, you could have said the same thing about Kirby Moore last season coming from Fresno State as well. So to me, right now, listen, I can change my mind certainly when we get into the 2024 season here, but right now I'm just going to trust in Drinkwitz. And KenPom.com, the college basketball stat site, always has comparisons, at least 4 or 5 comparisons to players from the past that current players are compared to statistically. And Mark Mitchell, the newest Tiger, well, one of his comparisons from his freshman year was another Tiger, a guy that you'll find, a name that you're going to find, you're going to know very, very well, a very familiar name to Missouri fans, but a surprising name as well to me in terms of comparisons. So let's talk about that coming up here in just a second. But first, let's talk about Gametime, where to me, the easiest way to download and buy tickets at the last minute by far is Gametime. I've had terrible experiences trying to buy tickets at the last second before. Well, Gametime is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch, and with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. Whether you're a Royals fan, a Cardinals fan, or anything in between, I'm telling you, Gametime is absolutely the way to go. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with the Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. By the way, I just realized I am basically wearing Duke colors on today's podcast. I assure you that is a coincidence. Though with Mark Mitchell, the former Blue Devil, now in the fold, I suppose it is kind of appropriate. And speaking of former Tigers, well, I thought it was really interesting. You click on Mark Mitchell's profile. Of course, you get like I said, you get similar players, not just for the career, but for every season of this person's career. And you go from statistical profiles, the most similar to the least similar as you read from left to right. Well, Mark Mitchell's true freshman season in 2023, the most similar player to Mark Mitchell is in fact Ronnie DeGray from 2021, his true freshman season at UMass. So indeed, this was pre-Mizzou, but I found that to be astonishing and kind of shocking and obviously very coincidental because 99 times out of 100, I've never even heard of the guys that most of these players are compared to. There's just 80 bajillion players in college basketball when you think 12 times 360 or whatever it is. That's each and every season. So I just thought it was pretty bizarre that Ronnie DeGray, of all people, his freshman season was statistically at least the most similar in the country for the last 30 years or so to Mark Mitchell's statistical profile. Though, again, just in terms of, this is why stats and context and just actually watching the game with your eyeballs is so important to me. Listen, I love the stats and I eat them up, but if you're not going to watch, well, you definitely got to hit the brakes and realize, hey, maybe I should actually see what type of player this guy is. Because to me, the similarities between Mitchell and DeGray, not really seeing a whole lot of them. Now, DeGray is a forward like Mitchell who can move around pretty well. He definitely doesn't have the athleticism or, just the natural mobility, ball handling, that type of stuff. Mitchell is a McDonald's All-American, former McDonald's guy for a reason. And with all due respect to Ronnie DeGray, who I liked Ronnie DeGray a lot as a player, well, he wasn't that type of talent. He really isn't. So anyway, just thought that was a bit of an interesting note there. Second, by the way, Jaleel White. Did I do that? Yes, I did. I just brought up Jaleel White on the podcast. No, not that Jaleel White. I'm just messing with you. But indeed, that is the second most similar guy to Mark Mitchell his freshman year. So some goofy notes there to go out on the end, I suppose, but I just wanted to give you some more interesting stuff here for Mizzou. And I got to say, got to have a lot to go on the Locked On Mizzou podcast. 5 episodes this week. Definitely be back on Monday as well. I got to say, I think Dennis Gates, despite Jevon Porter now seemingly being off the table, obviously Mizzou's going to be going after Jaden Quaintance still, the McDonald's All-American prospect of the 24 class. And also, I think there's got to be one more guy in the portal, probably a forward center type for Missouri, I would say, still coming. So we shall see. Could be some defections as well. Plenty of football stuff. Whatever comes, I'll have it all right here for you on Locked On Mizzou.